Established in 2004, Construction Research Institute of Malaysia, mostly known as CREAM, is a subsidiary of Construction Industry Development Board, or CIDB, that holds the responsibility over all matters related to the planning, implementation, and management of the research and development projects and related activities. With its mission to make CREAM globally recognized as the leading institute for research and development (R&D), and its vision to meet the strategic needs of R&D in the Malaysian construction industry, CREAM is committed to fulfilling its 5 objectives, that is, to fund, manage, and execute research activities and programs, offer tests and laboratory facilities for heavy structure engineering and building materials that focus on IBS structures and components, establish R&D cooperation with stakeholders in the domestic and overseas construction industry, earn funds and offer ventures for R&D activities and programs, and distribute the latest technology and R&D products to the national construction industry players through promotion, patent, and commercialization. CREAM serves as a key center that provides 3 main functions, namely research and development, testing of building materials and technical services, and assessment and certification. CREAM's main focus is the R&D program, which covers various fields. Its objective is to provide benefits to the progress of the nation's construction industry. The research themes cover 5 priority areas. They are the structural and material engineering, innovation and digitization technology, asset and facility management, environmental sustainability, productivity. Quality of service has always been CREAM's core value. This is to ensure that the Malaysian construction industry's strategic R&D needs are met. CREAM also provides testing services for material and building structure samples at its laboratory, Makmal Kereta Raya Malaysia, or MKRM. The purpose of this testing service is to assess quality and safety, as well as to improve materials and construction samples to meet the standards set. CREAM also offers services and other technical aspects such as inspection and sampling of imported building materials entering the country's ports. CREAM will conduct forensic investigations to construction sites in the event of failures or accidents. CREAM is pleased to announce that the MKRM has been expanded to Sabah and Sarawak, and that it is now ready to assist industry players in Borneo with construction material and structural testing in accordance with CIDB Act 520. CREAM Certification Services, CCS, provides construction certification services primarily for building materials listed in the CIDB Act 520. CCS performs an audit on the materials used in the production of product certification to ensure that the materials listed in Act 520 meet the standards. CCS has gained recognition from the Malaysian Standards Department in August 2018. In 2021, CREAM was recognized as a Construction Assessment Center by CIDB. This recognition has enabled CREAM to evaluate and rate construction projects. The evaluation covers 4 areas: quality, QLASIC; safety, chassis; green building, MICRES; infrastructure, sustainable infrastar. CREAM is also responsible to carry out Certificate of Approval (COA), which is a certificate issued by CIDB to ensure that all imported construction products must meet the specified requirements of Malaysian Standard (MS) and other approved international standards. The issuance of the COA is in accordance with the Custom Act 235/1967, Prohibition on Import, Amendment No. 2, Order 2014, to ensure the quality of imported construction products. To better serve the stakeholders in the national construction industry, CREAM established the Construction Industry Consulting Division, which focuses on industry networking and collaboration, as well as consulting services. The division aims to serve as a reference center and innovation hub for the Southeast Asian construction industry, ensuring economic and social responsibility in construction. CREAM is focused to be a leading-edge research institute for technology innovations in the construction industry, to act as a one-stop center for product inspection, testing, and certification services, to elevate safety, health, environment, and quality of the construction industry, to build partnerships with the industry stakeholders and researchers while exploring and encouraging the development of a knowledge-based industry.
Right, can you hear me? Okay, Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Welcome to CREAM Webinar Series 2023. Thank you so much for spending your Tuesday morning with us. My name is Intan Diana and I'll be your MC for today's webinar. So for your information, CREAM Webinar Series is a program organized by Construction Research Institute of Malaysia, or CREAM, and is a part of our efforts to initiate conversations on issues, challenges, opportunities, and initiatives for the construction industry and beyond. This webinar series is a monthly program, and every month we will have different themes. Okay, and for this month, our theme is environmental, social, and governance for the construction industry. CREAM is also very proud and happy to have YTLC member Hyde as our collaborator for this month's webinar. All right, so just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can drop your question into the chat box and our moderator will bring them up during the Q&A session at the end of the last presentation, okay? So without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator for today, technologist Dr. Haji Muhammad Harudin Ghani. He started working at CREAM since May 2007. He holds a PhD in Built Environment from University Malaya. He is currently a manager at Construction Research Institute of Malaysia and also an adjunct professor at University Technology Malaysia. So please welcome Dr. Harudin.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Diana. Okay, so Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning to everyone. All right. Thanks for the participating our webinar series today. That this topic today actually a very interesting topic. Actually, we will discuss a little bit detail on the environment, social, and governance. In short, we call it ESG, particularly in the construction industry. So today, a discussion will be focusing on the what is this of ESG and why is so important to the construction industry. So I believe many of us are not still not clear, not understand a detail about the ESG that relates to the construction industry. Now, today we have three speakers together with us to share their thoughts on the ESG and also to touch on the construction industry. So the first speaker will be on the Mr. Faiz Adri, the Managing Director of LabTech Energy. The second speaker we have today, actually, Miss Alice Zuria Asida Abdullah from the KPJ Healthcare Berhad. All right, and the last speaker, the third speaker, we have Mr. Anand Sampantraman, the Director Sustainability and Industry 4.0 from Tata Consultant Services. He from the India. So we have a very vast experience speakers today, very seasoned speaker. So I believe they will share the very fruitful, informative, and knowledgeable in terms of ESG today. So okay, so without further ado, I would like to call upon the speaker number one, Mr. Faiz Adri. Before I pass to the Mr. Faiz, allow me to read a little bit on about his brief introduction. So Mr. Faiz Adri, actually, welcome to Mr. Faiz Adri. Okay, Assalamualaikum. All right.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay. So Mr. Faiz Azri actually currently the managing director of LabTech Energy. All right. So he graduated from Durham University in Bachelor of Accountancy and Finance. All right. Navigating leadership across diverse sectors, Faiz Adri embodies the essence of dynamic expertise. In his roles as managing director of LabTech Energy, he's the forefront of sustainable innovation, while his board position at LabTech Berhad grounds him in practical in construction activities, right? Drawing from the deep-rooted contribution to Malaysia's social enterprise ecosystem and key roles as at institutions like Magic and the National Art Gallery Malaysia, Faiz's approach marries very experience seamlessly. As a speaker, his insights shine a light on the intricate dance between innovation and purposeful growth. So I believe Mr. Faiz Adri is the one of a person who vast experience dealing with the construction activities, I presume, and he will be start ball rolling of the discussion today. So maybe Mr. Faiz Adri, you have some around 45 minutes to present your talks about the ESG in the construction industry. All right. So I think without further ado, we give a warm welcome to the Mr. Faiz Adri. Okay. Right, Mr. Faiz Adri.
Assalamualaikum, everyone.
Right, thank
Very
you.
good morning.
Salam.
Thank you, Dr. Khairuddin, for that
Right.
very generous introduction, and also thank you, Intan, and the team at Construction Research Institute of Malaysia for organizing this webinar series and for inviting me here today. If you can just give me 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, okay. All right, clear.
Okay. I'd like to start on my sharing with everyone today. I think my topic is a bit more of an overview to share with everyone here on ESG in general, and I'll be talking about ESG as an opportunity and not a cost to the construction industry. And actually, this also applies to all the other industries as well. So for today's agenda, there are 7 points that we will be going through. First of all is establishing the foundations of ESG, understanding what ESG is. Secondly, we'll look into the opportunities that arises from ESG. And then we'll talk about some of the benefits of ESG, from efficiency, financing access, customer loyalty, value proposition. And lastly, we will look into a simple way of how we can all kickstart our ESG or sustainability journey. Yeah, everyone, if you don't mind, before we start my presentation today, I'd just like to share a little bit about LabTech Energy with everyone. So, in a nutshell, LabTech Energy is a sustainability services company that aims to ease organizations' sustainability journey. Yeah, our primary focus is twofold. Firstly is LabEd. This is our educational arm that's dedicated to creating a knowledge foundation on sustainability. This is where we curate training programs, workshops, courses, assessments, designed for real-world applicability and continuity, to empower our clients in terms of embarking on this ESG journey. Secondly is our lab tech arm. This is our technological arm. Here we look into coming up with innovative solutions, leveraging on emerging technologies such as AI, IoTs, even EVs, right, to promote sustainable practices, because we believe that technology is there to be used to accelerate the sustainability journey. So this is, in a nutshell, the offerings that we, or services that we offer. And this is just to give you an idea of how we run LabTech Energy, right? The way we work, what is the LabTech Energy gear? We always take an impact approach when it comes to executing project. Yes, profit is important, but we always believe that when we create impactful projects, there's more value that can be added. And then secondly is, which we all know that slowly we, the nation, right, we are trying to catch up with neighboring countries, and that's why we are offering this service to bridge that gap in terms of the talent pool, the knowledge, right, and the execution, to hopefully lessen the gap between us and our neighboring countries. And we take every time we approach a project, we take a holistic approach. That means at all levels of the organization, top down and bottom up. And therefore, we believe that we can achieve our objectives and vision in the ESG principles and, of course, technology. Now, let's go into the presentation for today. Yeah. Okay. First of all, before we go into the benefits of incorporating ESG, I think it's important for us to establish the foundations of what ESG is, right? Ladies and gentlemen, just think back at a time when the pinnacle of corporate responsibility was simply writing an annual check to charity, right? This era, as many of us know, was identified by corporate social responsibility, or CSR. But however, over the years, our global ethos has since evolved, right? Leading us from straightforward gestures of donation, CSR, to the encompassing and integrated approach of ESG. When we unpack ESG, or environmental, social, and governance, it reveals the essence of the triple bottom line, which I'm pretty sure every one of us here has heard before, or the environmental pillar, if you will, or planet. This dimension not only discusses how companies or organizations are compliant with industry standards, but it dives deeper, right, into the realms of sustainability, waste minimization, and energy efficiency, amongst other things, right? Secondly, under the social pillar, where people is the key focus, this is where the company looks into fostering and nurturing relationships with their stakeholders, their relevant key stakeholders, fostering community engagement, and of course, prioritizing the well-being of stakeholders. And lastly, you have the governance pillar of ESG, which is closely related to economic prosperity, where we look into the principles of ethical businesses, from ensuring transparency and fairness and accountability at all levels. And as I mentioned, this is when we have good governance, the value will then be able to be transferred to the end user or the customer in a much more impactful way. So this sort of a general overview of ESG and how we have shifted from CSR back in the 80s, 90s to now ESG being part and parcel of how organizations should be run, right? But now the question comes on, how do we as businesses ensure that these ESG principles are, more than just ideals, not just us being tree huggers, right? As you can see, through globally endorsed frameworks like these four here that I've listed out, they provide good structure, guidance, and standards for any businesses to take the lead or the starting point of embarking on the ESG sustainable journey. First of all, you have the infamous Sustainable Development Goals that was created by the United Nations, which is definitely a beacon for global change, right? And under the SDGs, there are 17 actionable goals that cover a range of topics from climate change, climate action, quality education, to reducing inequalities and ensuring clean water and sanitation, right? These the SDGs are the golden standards, right? Serving as both an inspiration and a checklist for businesses worldwide. Now here at home, we have our own Bursa Malaysia's Sustainability Report, which is a framework introduced by Bursa Malaysia to guide Malaysian companies and PLCs towards better sustainable practices. With clear sustainability reporting guidelines, Bursa Malaysia ensures organizations are transparent about their impacts and efforts towards a sustainable future. Then as we move along, we have, I would say, the front runner, right, in sustainability reporting, which is GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, which enables organizations to understand, report, and communicate their socio-environmental impact. So GRI sets a common standard that and ensures that companies, regardless of where you're at, right? You can be in Malaysia, Singapore, or Thailand, regardless of the geographical location, we can all speak a unified language when it comes to sustainability and responsibility. Because I think one of the biggest issues in the realm of ESG and sustainability is the communication part. Is how do we communicate effectively to our stakeholders on the impacts that we have created without greenwashing and so on, right? So GRI is a very good globally recognized standards that help us do this. And you, of course, you have your TCFD. This is the Task Force on Climate Financial Related or Climate Related Financial Disclosure, where TCFD recognizes the economic implications of environmental changes, and it aids businesses in identifying and disclosing financial risks and opportunities related to our climate change. So these are some of the frameworks, globally recognized. Of course, there are other frameworks out there, but these are the main four, I would say, frameworks that are being widely used globally and locally, right? Opportunities or the driving factors on why an organization should adopt ESG. What are the opportunities that it offers? I believe that which is understandable. Still a number of us think that ESG is a trend, But I believe that ESG is more than just a trend. Like how technology, back in the 90s, the internet, people thought it was a trend, but it's here to stay, and technology is ever growing, right? ESG to me is the same. It's more than a trend. It's a movement driven by numerous benefits, amongst which are, first of all, increasing in efficiency, especially in the construction industry, right? When we as businesses integrate ESG principles, this can lead to significant savings. For example, energy savings, cost savings. As I mentioned, particularly in sectors like construction, where resource optimization is key. And I think it's important to note that when we talk about ESG or sustainability, it's not about eliminating 100% waste. No, the definition of sustainability itself is about utilizing the current resources you have to meet your current business needs without affecting the next generation who comes into your organization to be able to use the same resources to meet their business needs. So if you think about it in the long nice to have, right? But it's not. It should be the principles of how businesses should operate and run, because in the long run, you will definitely increase efficiency, which leads to cost saving. Secondly, now with the evolving financial landscape, right, we are seeing that a lot more banks internationally and even locally now are looking into incorporating ESG criteria or principles into their financing products, right? In Malaysia, the example of initiatives like the MGTC's GTFS, this shows a clear preference for sustainable businesses in Malaysia, and it's of course growing, I believe. Thirdly, the opportunity here is through providing impact, to providing purpose to the end customers. You are actually building customer loyalty over the long run, right? Because which I'll touch deeper on each of this after this, right? But we see globally, even here, that modern consumers, they resonate with responsible brands, right? Ensuring better retention and enhanced brand appeal, because they want to feel part of the solution without compromising on their lifestyle. So this is what we're seeing as well. And of course, lastly is improved value proposition for the organization. A sustainable outlook not only enhances your operational efficiency, but also meets consumer demands, right, and ensures long-term asset value. So these are some of the opportunities or some of the benefits that organizations, companies can achieve through implementing ESG principles in their organization. But what better way to showcase these benefits than to share with everyone a case study that we recently completed. So this is an increased efficiency case study for Amata in Thailand, in Chonburi. So Letech NG and our partners, we completed this project recently. Just a quick background, Amata is actually an industrial park developer and operator in Thailand, one of the biggest in Thailand. And this was executed in their Chonburi location. So Amata had two problems, business problems that they wanted to, or problem statements that they wanted to address. First of all, with the movement of reducing carbon emissions, sustainability, the question is, how can Amata reduce their GHG emissions by 30% by the year 2030? Secondly, is how do their projects become low carbon cities by 2040? So these are the two main problem statements that they posed in related to ESG. And the challenges that we saw in Amata was, first of all, how do we help Amata adapt and increase their capability to effectively measure and offset their their carbon emissions. Secondly is how do we reduce their GHG emissions, right, from their operation to be able to achieve their low carbon city goal. And lastly is how do we develop, or can we help Amata develop climate related products, new climate related products and services to offer to their tenants, and thus giving Amata a competitive edge. So to overcome the challenges, what we did was we utilized our carbon and energy management platform, which is an AI IoT tool that connects their existing sensor systems, meters, even renewable hardwares, right, into a common platform for us to be able to establish the energy and carbon baseline for full carbon footprint disclosure. And through our platform, we have a feature where we enable any carbon abatement strategies that is eligible for carbon credits and renewable energy certificates, which we convert on the platform into these things, and is certified by Tuksut and blockchain, and Amata was able to integrate with third-party um, carbon marketplaces to sell the carbon credits through the platform itself. And this, as I mentioned, creates new sort of opportunity for Amata in terms of revenue. Right? And lastly is that our solution, our platform, is also in compliant to the ISO 14064, which is related to carbon reporting, and also to Thailand's greenhouse organization carbon report submission. So this is the solution that we provided for Amata to hit this goal. And these are the results that we obtained from this implementation. We saw that the operational efficiency or total efficiency improved by about 30%, right? And we helped develop a baseline for their carbon emissions and energy consumption, so that they know where they're at and they can plan out on how to achieve their 30% reduction by 2030 goal, right? Because if you don't have that baseline, how do you know how to move to the next step, right? Which is very important, which I feel like a lot of companies in Malaysia, I think we tend to be quote unquote too eager, which is good, but we tend to forget the foundations that we have to start with baby steps first, right? And through this platform as well, as I mentioned, having that marketplace integration, we were able to develop a new carbon service revenue stream for Amata, which helped them increase their revenue by about 5 to 10% through the selling of RECs and carbon credits. Right? So this is a brief case study for Amata. And for sectors such as construction, the foundation that we lay today, will shape the world of tomorrow, as you say. And I really believe that ESG provides this blueprint for building a future that's not just profitable, but also sustainable and inclusive as well, right? Now we go on to the next benefit, which is accessibility to finance or financial access. As we all know, in any industry, financing access or accessibility to finance is the lifeblood of the industry, especially in construction, right? And financing globally and even locally is undergoing a profound transformation in response to global ESG movements, right? In today's financial landscape, the conventional vetting processes are now being supplemented with a new checklist, which is the ESG criteria. Financial institutions globally, from traditional banks to innovative fintechs, are evolving to prioritizing businesses that demonstrate a genuine commitment to ESG principles. Now, even local banks, right? Some local banks, if you were to go to get project financing for some projects, there are, instead of looking at just the technical aspects and the business model, there are certain sustainability KPIs or principles that they want the clients to adhere to, right? So we are seeing this more and more. And right here in Malaysia, like I said, our financial landscape is technology corporations, MGTC's Green Technology Financing Scheme, GTFS. Yeah, this stands out as a pioneering initiative, right? The scheme not only promotes the adoption of green technology, but also provides incentives for businesses that are willing to champion sustainability. Companies that have availed this benefit has not seen just financial gains, but also enhanced market reputation. If we uh, been following the progress of the developments of the sustainability space in Malaysia, there's another pressing reason to emphasize on this topic actually. Research done that says that for Malaysia to meet its ambitious goal of carbon neutrality, is just carbon neutrality, not net zero, by 2050, a considerable amount of investment is required. And this amount is estimated to be between 350 to 450 billion ringgit. And a significant portion of this funding is expected to come from the private sector, right? So what does this mean, right? This underscores the critical role, right, that businesses, especially in the construction sector, will play in shaping a sustainable future for our nation. So us as construction companies, we have to start and lay the foundations now. So when this comes, we are ready and prepared for it, and we're not reactive, right? Now, if we zoom out a little from Malaysia, if we look into the ASEAN region, that it represents, or it presents, a plethora of case studies when we talk about financing access. For example, the ASEAN Green Bonds Standards, which is inspired by the International Capital Market Association's Green Bond Principles, is a testament to the region's commitment to sustainable financing. Philippines, for instance, witnessed its maiden green bond issuance by the China Banking Corporation, channeling funds explicitly towards green projects, right? So it's already happening around us. Of course, if you talk about the EU, they are doing this even more advanced. I was just to share with everyone, I was actually had a conversation with a huge construction company in Sweden. So one of the ways that one of the schemes that the EU has for construction companies is that when you are looking to finance your project, your development, if you are able to show that you are able to reduce carbon emissions through your construction materials, through your way of constructing the buildings, then the government will then subsidize or give grants to not even financing. It is 100% grant to subsidize the project, and the subsidization or subsidy is how they give the grants, and I think that's a very interesting model, which I think Malaysia is still trying to find its way, but sooner or later this can be applied in this region as well. Now, when we talk about financing, an essential consideration for industries is the emergence of carbon taxes as well. We've all heard that Singapore, we're talking about carbon taxes. Basically, carbon taxes are to drive companies to reduce their GHG gas emissions, right? But by putting a price on carbon, right, businesses are financially, incentivized to reduce their carbon footprints. Singapore, for example, of course, Singapore has made strides in this area. Back in 2019, when they introduced the carbon tax, it's set at, I think, about $5 per ton for GHG emissions. And of course, apparently by next year it's going to quintuple to $25, and the year after it will increase even more, right? And while of course at the moment $5 might seem modest, but it is indicative of a future where environmental costs have real economic implications, right? But beyond national boundaries, going back to the EU, we as Malaysian companies need to also recognize the evolution of global policies, and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, stands out when you talk about carbon. Right? It was introduced by the EU. CBAM is actually designed to level the playing field by imposing a tax on carbon-intensive imports into the EU, to ensure that European industries making efforts to reduce emissions aren't undercut by products from regions with less stringent carbon regulations. So, what does that mean for us, for companies here in Malaysia, right? What it means is that if we are looking to tap into the global markets, especially those targeting the European markets, we must be proactive, right? We need to align with such frameworks, or we risk facing economic barriers, whether we like it or not. That's where the world is moving towards to. So it's either we take action now, or we be reactive later on. And when we are reactive, we still have to fork up, money to mitigate those problems later on. But the question is, why not start now, right? But to close this section, I think the message is clear here, right? If we incorporate ESG principles into our ethos, right, I think the doors of financing will open wider than you'd imagine, right? And of course, apart from creating impactful projects, you'll be actively contributing to a sustainable future, not only for yourself, but for the future generation as well, right? Now, we go to the third benefit of incorporating ESG principles into your organization is, of course, as I mentioned before, is customer loyalty, right? And the construction industry is no exception for this, right? As construction industries and companies, right, our organizations represent more than just physical buildings, right? We have to embody principles of trust, reliability, and a resounding promise for a brighter and sustainable future. Our focus on integrating ESG principle is more than just a strategic choice, right? It's become a cornerstone of how we envision our future in the industry. And one of the profound effects of this commitment is, of course, deepen customer loyalty. We cannot deny this fact, right? The consumers of the day, or the contemporary customers, is discerning and values driven. And what is catalyzing this shift in perspective? Basically, it's an amalgamation of heightened awareness. Everything now is accessible. Something that's happening in the south of Sudan, we can get information, news on it immediately. This leads to more consciousness, global conscience, right? And a desire to associate with brands that resonate with personal values. No longer, we can't be, people don't buy into the salesman tactic anymore, right? Of just selling and that's it. People want to work and buy from companies looking for long-term relationships, right? And a recent survey did by the Star proves this point, right? A survey on consumers' perception on sustainability. They found out that 82% of the people they interviewed agreed that companies must be transparent about their environmental impact. And 48% says local sourcing has become more important. And because of that, 28% are willing to pay a premium for more sustainable goods and services. For example, in Singapore, if every one of you has been to the Keppel building, which is a net zero building, I had the opportunity of visiting that building and interviewing some of the tenants. They were more than willing to pay a higher rental premium for the building, as you know that uh, impacts their sustainability goals, right? They want to be part of that community, and as organizations or even big organizations, they can tell their stakeholders that, look, we are um, you know doing all we can towards moving to this, and they're willing to do that at a premium, right? And in this ecosystem, construction industry, a dedication to ESG principles is no longer just a peripheral consideration, right? It's no longer oh, it's just a nice to have. No, it's central to building and sustaining customer trust nowadays. Now, when the customers are younger generation, right? This is what they're looking for. By intertwining these principles, ESG principles, into construction, we're not merely constructing just buildings, as I mentioned. We're building lasting legacies, right? And as I mentioned, anchored in trust and mutual respect, and a collective aspiration for a sustainable future. This is why we should not, look away from this in this industry, right? Now, the last benefit that I will touch on when it comes to implementing ESG principles is, of course, improved in value proposition in your products or services, right? In today's construction paradigm, right? Our commitment to ESG, like I said just now, is not just an add-on, it's foundational. Just consider the TRX tower in KL. Is not just an architectural marvel, it's not just a Malaysian icon, but it's a testament to 35% less energy consumption, as it blends eco-efficiency with cost savings, right? So this approach doesn't just resonate with nature, it speaks volumes to consumers and investors. And as I mentioned, today's discerning buyers and investors, they see beyond aesthetics. They see value in sustainable assets over the long run. And when we talk about, I know we've been talking about the E part a lot, but when we talk about S in the construction industry, I think safety is a paramount concern in the construction industry, right? And safety through implementing ESG principles has gained immense ground, right? With modern ESG protocols implemented, we've seen a 30% dip in workplace incidents across ASEAN. And this is tangible, right? This is tangible benefit of integrating the social aspect of ESG. And for us, just to share at LabTech Berhad, we're not just observers or bystanders of this. We have started implementing, even though we're not a big company, we have started implementing our energy and carbon management platform to be able to establish that baseline and to be able for us to create those sustainable goals. And this reflects our pledge, to be pioneers in this transformative journey, right? And in essence, ESG in construction is our blueprint for crafting assets that are not only valuable today but remain pertinent for the future. So, of course, coming back to the E part, apart from energy efficiency, having technology in place, you can automate a lot of things which reduces inefficiency, like water and energy, having much more sustainable planning environment, improving the quality of your indoor environment, which leads to increase in productivity. Not a lot of people realize that when the indoor quality of a space is optimized, it affects or impacts or leads to increase in productivity. And this was an experiment that we did back in Magic, when I was in Magic, to see how the building or built environment affected the productivity of the companies there. Right, and it was a simple experiment where we just increased the temperature and lowered the temperature. When we lowered the temperature to about 16 degrees, we saw that productivity dropped by about 6% to 8%, and a lot more people were going to the pantry, to eat the biscuits, to warm their body up, right? And on the other hand, when we increased the temperature higher, we saw a lot of people were not at their desk. They went out into the open to get some fresh air, to get wind. So that one dropped, I think, about 12% in terms of. It was a simple experiment, but that shows, right, how we have to find the optimum balance, and that's where technology should come into play. Things like AI, IoT, using AI to understand the data and trends of the people in the building, and regulating the assets in the building to be able to adapt to that situation and optimize the whole environment there. So these are, again, the benefits of implementing ESG principles in the organization. Again, increasing efficiency, accessibility, ease of financing, building customer loyalty, and of course, improve value proposition. Now, before I end my presentation, maybe some of you are asking, how do we start our sustainability journey, right? Simple. For me, there are 3 steps that each and every one of us can start to start our ESG journey. Number 1 is to set your goals, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a carbon neutrality pledge, or even a simple ESG KPI in your organization, or even waste management goal. As long as you set your goals, in terms of trying to become a more sustainable company, you're already on the right track. Once you set your goals, 2 is always to track progress. Whether you use manual means or tech-based means of tracking progress, for example, like our carbon and energy management platform, right, to track carbon emissions, energy consumption. Just track your progress, because you can only improve on what you can track, right? And lastly, the most important part, I believe, is to communicate your progress, and to communicate it effectively without greenwashing, right? This could be through your sustainability statements, or sustainability report, or even communicating through your digital mediums or social media. And it's very important to identify the relevant key stakeholders and communicate this effectively to them. I see a lot of companies that, small, medium companies, they tend to overlook this aspect. Is quite important, because we need to share the ideals or the principles of ESG to everyone, because we cannot do it alone. LabTech Energy, we can't do alone to achieve this, because this whole sustainability issue is a huge issue, and it requires a collective effort. But when you communicate, you open the doors for collaboration, you open the doors for discussion, for us to move forward to this bigger goal, right? Yes, and so that's all for today. I thought I hope you guys understood or learned a little bit about ESG, and I'm happy to answer any questions later on. And if anyone wants to connect, I'm also happy to see how we at LabTech Energy can assist you on your sustainable journey. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I'll
All right.
pass
Thank you.
the floor back to to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Faiz, for your very interesting some of the points that are very fundamental, easy to understand about the ESG. So I believe we grasped some of the points that you mentioned about that we have to set the tone on the how to set the goals, the communication part, on the track progress. So these are the very important that we need to know at the first place for the to kickstart of the ESG. Right. So thank you. I think you should stay with us. So because at end of this session, we're going to have a Q&A session with the speakers. Right. So okay. So let's move to the next speakers. All right. So the second speaker would be on the from the KPJ Healthcare Berhad. All right. Miss Alice Zuria Asida Abdullah. Okay. Okay. Assalamualaikum, Alice. All right.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay. All right. So before you start from the presentation, allow me to read your introduction. Allow me to make to participant to know about your backgrounds. All right. So Alice is a registered sustainability practitioner with more than 14 years of experience in the sustainable environment, from property development, FM, facility management, also the healthcare sectors. Right. So Alice has both exposure in environmental sustainability and also ESG. She is registered with a few professional organizations as ICSP, Certified Sustainability Reporting Specialist, CSRS, Certified GHG Accounting Specialist, USGBC Lead Accredited Professional, LEEDAP, Green Building Index Facilitator, GBIF, Green RE Manager, and also the MyCREST Assessor. I think Alice have the right person who can speak about the ESG, in particularly on the healthcare and also the construction. Maybe you have both experience in property and also the healthcare sector. I think the best person that can touch on the ESG, I think Alice can speak further on this. Right. So without further ado, I pass to Alice to start your presentation. Okay, Alice.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, thank you again, Dr. Khairuddin, Intan, and the team at CREAM for inviting me to share some knowledge and experience in ESG, particularly in construction industry. So let me share you my slide first. Can you guys see my slide here?
Not yet, Alice.
Not yet.
Yeah. Please share again.
All right. Let me check. Share.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice. All right. So clear.
Clear.
Yeah.
All right. So our big topic here today.
Alice, can you make a full screen of your
Full
presentation? Yeah. Full slides.
I'm using slideshow already. Jap.
That one's a slideshow.
This one, right?
Ah, okay. Yeah. That one a full screen. Okay.
Let me check. I need my notes here.
Okay.
Sorry. Just window.
Okay, full screen. Okay, just click on the full screen. Okay, all right. So
All
now
right.
appear on the full screen. Okay.
Now it's full screen. All
Okay.
right.
Right.
Okay, so the big topic here today is ESG. What is ESG and why is it important for construction industry? Since our first speaker, Mr. Faiz, has touched mostly on the ESG and also the benefits of having ESG integrated into your construction industry and company. So I will touch on the sustainability versus ESG and how ESG metrics work in the construction industry, and also some on how construction companies can integrate ESG principles into their operation, as well as benefits from embracing ESG. Right. So first is the definition of sustainability versus ESG, because I noticed that some people tend to got confused between the word of sustainability and ESG. So basically, sustainability and ESG is not the same thing. It's almost similar. It's intertwined. So for the definition of sustainability is basically we meeting the needs of present without compromising the ability of our future generation to meet their needs. So as Mr. Faiz mentioned, we only can we use what we need only, then preserve the remaining resources to our future generation. So there's saying that goes like, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So we must save some resources for them as well. So while on the ESG is basically a framework to assess and measure a company's business practices and performance on various sustainability and ethical issues. So basically, in layman term, sustainability is general practices. In our daily life, we can use sustainability, practice sustainability, while the ESG is the framework or the measurement tool to measure how a company or organization behave in terms of sustainability practices they have. So there are quite a few of ESG rating agencies, because this is a framework to measure the sustainability practices, right? So there must be some rating agencies. So currently, globally, we have rating agencies like FTSE Russell, MSCI, and also the Dow Jones Sustainability Indices. This is SI. So in Malaysia, for the listed company under Bursa, they are required to submit sustainability reporting or sustainability statement for to showcase or to communicate on their ESG and sustainability practices. So the ESG rating by Bursa is FTSE Russell, and the recommended framework to measure the ESG performance, sustainability performance of a company. The reporting framework, recommended reporting framework is GRI currently. So that's for listed company under Bursa. So the goal of both ESG and sustainability is basically to create business that only use what they need, only take what they need, while minimizing the impact of environmental and social and also living economic EES, economic, environmental, societal system capable of independent existence. So minimize the impact of environment and then increase our social performance. All right. So the how ESG metrics, no, this one is ESG, environmental, social governance. So the measurements or the criteria under ESG performance, sustainability performance of a company, divided into three, which is environmental, social, and governance. So environmental basically refers to companies or industries' impact on the natural environment. So in the construction industry, environmental considerations are very crucial due to the significant use of resources during construction and operation, use of energy, use of water, as well as the waste generated associated with the construction projects. Right. So under social refers to relationship of that company has with its employees, local community, customers, and other stakeholders. In sustainability reporting, we refer to the social as stakeholders, external and also internal stakeholders. So for social aspect of ESG, involve to ensure safe working conditions for our staff, our laborers, providing fair wages, fair treatment to them, and also respecting the rights of workers. So under the governance part, the last pillar of ESG governance is basically refers to the internal structure of the company, internal structures, the company's policies and practices that guide how a company behave or operates. So in the construction industry, good governance ensures transparency, accountability, and also ethical behavior. So effective governance in a construction company can help prevent corruption. So ensure compliance with the regulators, regulations, and promote fair competition. So so that's basically it under the definition on how we measure sustainability practices under E, S, and also G, governance part. So next one, how ESG metrics works in the industry. Okay. All right. So how does ESG metrics work in the industry? So metrics are basically specific measurement. So specific measurement to calculate or assess a construction company's performance in the areas of ESG, as I mentioned before. So sustainability practices by the companies. So these metrics are provide quantitative data that allows our stakeholders to evaluate how our company is complying or adhering to sustainable and responsible practices. So on environmental pillar of ESG metrics, there are 5. So involve energy consumption, the carbon footprint, the waste generation, the water consumption, and also the green building certification. So environmental metrics and for the energy consumption, it's basically to measure the amount of energy used in the construction activities as well as the construction company's operation. So this includes electricity and also the fuel combustion during the construction. For example, your diesel generator at the site, so and also your fleet vehicle, the use of diesel or petrol for your fleet vehicle to do your activities. So the next one is to quantify the greenhouse gases, or normally we call it as carbon footprint. The carbon footprint produced from your activity, operation, transportation, as well as the material used in your construction projects. So that's on the quantification of carbon footprint. And next one, we refer to waste generated in your operation. So in your company operation as well as your construction projects. So waste generated is not just by tracking how much we generate waste from the construction activities, and we also need to track the amount of how many volume the waste disposed, and the disposal method plays an important role as well, because you know, when we generate waste, we try to avoid landfill, because landfill, the carbon emission from the landfill is quite high. So we try to avoid landfill. We try to promote the 3R or 4R exercise to reduce the waste generated at the site. And if you cannot reduce, then you need to reuse the waste generated. And then if you cannot reduce, then the last part is to recycle your material or waste generated, recycle back, or you can repurpose the waste generated. So on the fourth part under environmental pillar of ESG is water consumption, the water usage. We need to calculate the water consumption during the construction project as well as the company operation. So taking into account the water consumption or water usage, both direct and indirect water usage. So water from the potable sources and also the natural sources. And the last part under environmental is the where your construction or your building constructed comply with comply or meet sustainable building standards, which is green building certification such as LEED, and in Malaysia we have green building index, we have greenery, and also the latest one we have MyCREST under CREAM and NCIDB. MyCREST is for an additional info. MyCREST is quite good of green building certification because they measure the impact. They measure the impact of the construction of that building operation as well, in terms of carbon reduction, the carbon emission and also carbon reduction. So if you do the green building certification using the MyCREST, you can quantify your carbon emission as well. So yep. So in the next part, the second pillar of ESG, the metrics measured under social part, there are four. First one is the worker safety incident. Workers safety incident is we count the number of accidents, injuries, fatalities, and also near miss to assess the company's commitment to ensure safe working condition. So the company should provide safe working condition to the staff, to the laborers at the site, at the construction site. So that's one of the metric under social. So the second one is diversity in workforce. So we measure the diversity of construction workforce. How the diversity works is including the gender, ethnicity, and age to ensure equal opportunities to all our workforce. So the third one is community engagement under social. Community engagement is basically to evaluate the company effort, the company's effort, where you engage the communities, address their concerns, and contribute to community development. So normally for a construction project, we normally have the social impact assessment and also the environmental impact assessment, right? So that's some under community engagement where you address, you identify what are their concerns related to your construction or development building of buildings. So and also the last the under the community engagement we have the community development. So basically under GRI, for example, GRI, there's one metrics they ask about, they measure about the company's investment for the community. For I think most of the developers and construction companies now are aware that whenever you have the development ongoing, so you have that this community investment or social investment under your project. Normally, for example, you set up or you construct a surau or public or community hall for the community. So that's some kind of the community investment you can have under your social. So the last part under social metrics is the labor practices. So labor practices is to assess the compliance with labor law. We have fair wages, and also to treat workers in ethical way throughout the supply chain, not just on our employee or staff, also the supply chain, meaning that vendors, contractors, so for the whole project team. All right, so the last part, the last pillar, there are 5 metrics under governance pillar. So first one is ethical conduct. So again, as I mentioned before, governance is about how a company, how that in a construction company behave in an ethical and responsible manner. So ethical conduct is very important. The metrics measure the company's compliance and also the adherence to ethical business practices, such as the anti-corruption, the anti-bribery, so the policies there, and fair competition. So the second one, the board composition. So board composition is very important, where this can involve in impact, can impact the decision making and oversight of ESG initiative. So sustainability or ESG approach is basically two-way, top to down and also down to top. So on the board composition, we can use the top to down approach to evaluate the diversity and independence of the board of directors. This is important because this can impact the decision making of ESG initiative proposed for the company. All right. So the third one is the executive composition. Executive composition, basically the metrics assess the alignment of executive compensation, their benefits, their bonuses with ESG goals to encourage responsible decision making. So this is quite similar to the board composition, but this is for the executive. So we align their benefit or their KPI with the ESG goals to encourage responsible decision making. So, and also to get buy-ins from higher level of management. All right, so the fourth one is the transparency and reporting. So as Mr. Faiz has mentioned, most important, how you integrate ESG, right? So you have like set the target, you measure and track progress, then you communicate your progress. So in communicating your progress, in doing your sustainability reporting, in reporting your ESG performance or achievements, so transparency is very important. So the metrics under transparency and reporting is to evaluate the frequency and also the quality of your accessibility reporting to ensure the accountability to stakeholders. So yeah, so the final part, the fifth part of metrics under governance is about the risk management. So the under risk management is metrics to ensure and measure the company's ability to identify and mitigate risks associated with sustainability and also ESG factors, such as the regulatory changes or reputational risks, and also the latest one, the TCFD, the Task Force of Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. One of the elements under TCFD requirements is basically to put your climate change into embed your climate change into your current risk assessment practices. So yeah, so that's basically the metrics and how they work in the construction industry. So next part we will go to how the construction company can integrate ESG principles. So yep. Okay, so how construction companies can integrate ESG principles? I divide the principles under three ESG pillars. So under environment, you can integrate the ESG or accessibility practices, we could say, accessibility into your environmental practices by using the sustainable materials and also design. So sustainable materials are basically, for example, if you are familiar with green building requirements, so there are a lot of sustainable materials that you can use in your construction in developing your building. So, for example, you use the recycled content material for your consumables. You use the low VOC paints and also the adhesive, and also you can use like sustainably sourced wood, the certified by FSC or yeah. So that's just for the example of environmental friendly products. Then in the design, you can implement green building design that focus on energy efficiency, that focus on the natural lighting and also ventilation to reduce energy consumption. So one of the criteria under green building are basically to calculate the OTTV, the overall thermal transfer value. So the positioning, the orientation of your building plays a role. The selection of your material for your window and facade also plays a role, where all of this can contribute to contribute to the heat intake from outside to your building, which impact to your energy consumption. So for example, if you have high OTTV, so your building tend to like get very hot during the day, then you will need to use more aircon to cool off your to cool down your building, right? So that's the elements of reduce energy consumption by implementing the green building design practices in your building when constructing your building. So you put consideration on the sustainable material and design. So during the construction project, the waste generated quite a lot. So we should set up waste management plan where we segregate waste. We try to repurpose or reuse the waste generated and divert material from the landfill by sending them to recycle center. And also we can incorporate the modular construction, normally the IBS methods that generate it can generate less waste and allow for easier recycling. So less waste, then generate less waste is the first priority in the 3R hierarchy, right? So reduce, reuse, and also recycle. So try to reduce the generation of waste first, right? So the third one under environmental, you can integrate in your green building or building construction project, is to incorporate energy efficient technologies using the LED lightings, using the energy efficient chillers or air conditioning systems, HVAC, and also using the renewable energy to offset your energy consumption. And also design the whole building to meet or to meet, not to just meet the energy efficiency standards. We can try to exceed the energy efficiency standard and certifications. For example, the Energy Star portfolio by LEED, and also the energy performance, the BEI. So at the design stage, we should integrate all these energy efficient system to set our building in construction to be like have low BI, which is building energy intensity. Lower the lower of BI, the better, because BI is basically building energy intensity. So how intense is your energy consumption per area, right? So the last part and the environment, you can also integrate practices like water conservation. So by selecting the water efficient features, water efficient plumbing features into your material selection during the design stage, and also install it to that building. And also using the landscaping techniques that reduce water usage in buildings and surrounding areas. So basically normally the landscaping or related to how you select your plants, preferably to use the native and adaptive plants which requires minimal water. Uh, and also the second part, under water conservation, you can also try to install to capture and also reuse back the rainwater for irrigation and non-potable uses. So just to share with you guys, I have a few green building projects that some of them are not considered failed, but they install a rainwater harvesting system. But the saving you can see through what are the usage of the rainwater harvesting system. So what are the purpose of having that rainwater harvesting system? If you use that only for the irrigation, it won't save you much water, because again I said the landscaping techniques using the native and adaptive plants. So normally our plants in Malaysia are basically after 2 years they don't require irrigation. They can just like survive with all the rain we have. So we can so if you use your rainwater harvesting solely for your irrigation, you won't save much of water. So you won't save much of your water bill. So And then the other project I have is very considered as successful because they installed the rainwater harvesting to use for the toilet flushing, because you know the toilet flushing, the frequency of people flushing the toilet every day. So you can have a very significant saving on the water, on the water part, if you're using rainwater harvesting to for your toilet flushing, right? So that just uh, sharing from my projects, previous project. So under social, we have you can integrate the community engagement, workplace safety and diversity, and also employee well-being. As I mentioned before, the social aspect of ESG for a construction company is basically on the external and also internal stakeholders, with community engagement, community, staff, and also our contractors and vendors. So community engagement, normally during the construction and also the planning stage, you can engage with local communities very early at the planning stage to address any concern, any of their and to provide information about your project that will impact their community, and also to seek input if there are any concerns. So and also under community engagement, you can invest in community development. As I mentioned before, you invest in constructing the community hall or surau for the community, right? So under workplace safety and diversity, you can integrate safe working condition for your employees and contractors by providing them the proper training, the full complete set protective equipment and safety protocols as well. So under diversity and inclusion, under workplace safety and diversity, you can practice the fair hiring practices. You can provide them equal opportunity for all employees and contractors as well. Right. So on the employee well-being, you can conduct or provide health and wellness program for your employees and contractors at the site. Health and wellness program, for example, the mental health support. Then you provide the ergonomic workstations and also the work-life balance initiative. That's under health and wellness program. For your staff, you can offer to have like dedicated training and development. This is some kind of like opportunities to promote employee growth and satisfaction. So yeah. So under governance part, we have ethical governance, supply chain responsibility, transparent reporting. So you can integrate your um, ethical governance. You can have your ethical governance in your operation by establishing strong corporate governance practices that promote ethical behavior to prevent corruption, to ensure compliance with laws and regulations. And also you can have independent board members who oversee ESG initiative and to ensure alignment with the company's overall strategy. So on the supply chain responsibility, you can collaborate with your suppliers to ensure they are complying to ethical and sustainable sourcing practices. So you can put in your supplier assessment checklist to check or to evaluate them, to assess them if they are now conducting ethical and sustainable sourcing practices as well. So then you can on the supply chain, you can also evaluate the environmental and social impact of material you use for your construction projects throughout the supply chain. So normally this one we can have info from your supplier, um, and also you can have like in the material specs catalogs. All right. So the last part under government, transparent reporting, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So you need to ensure your reporting of sustainability performance, sustainability activities, and also performance. You publish regular ESG reports. Then you set measurable targets and you report transparently to ensure to show your commitment transparency to communicate your performance to your stakeholders internally and externally. And also when you set the measurable targets, you can find the improvement. So when you set the measurable target, you can find the gaps and you can find the opportunity for improvements in the near future. All right. So my last slide would be on the benefits of embracing ESG. I know Mr. Adri has touched a little bit on the benefits of having ESG incorporated in your business operation, your construction operation. But this is basically the overall, not too detailed. So the first one would be the enhanced reputation and brand value. When you practice your business, when you do your construction projects in an ethical and responsible way, you can position your construction company, you can position your company as a ethical industry leader. So this will enhance your reputation. This also will attract socially conscious customer and investors and differentiate you from other competitors. So the next one under risk mitigation. So when you embrace ESG in your company operation, you address the environmental and social issues proactively. So you identify and mitigate the potential risks, inclusive of climate change risk. This will result in avoiding or reducing the legal and regulatory penalties you can have, then minimize the project delays due to environmental and social conflicts, preventing reputational damage. Right. So the third one, cost saving, of course, when you have the sustainability initiative, for example, more on the environmental part, when you have the energy efficient resource, when you responsible, you use all the resources, then you reduce waste generation. And also when you lower your energy consumption in terms of your electricity as well as your fuel consumption at the site. So this will have impact on the cost saving. This will translate into significant cost saving over time, contributing to your company's improved financial performance. Right. So then when you have good reputation, when you have good reputation and brand value, so when you demonstrate a strong ESG or accessibility practices, so you can have a better access to capital and financing at favorable terms. Many investors now, where investors and financial institutions are increasingly considering ESG performance in making their investment decision. For example, now there are a lot of sustainability linked loans offered by banks, by financial institution to the companies, where you will need to submit them the sustainability KPI to measure on the impact of your sustainability projects. So for example, CIMB provided the sustainability linked loans with better interest rates, with lower interest rate compared to conventional loans, right? So next one is improve project performance. When you address your community concerns, you manage your all the environmental and social risks, you ensure your worker safety, then you will get like your project are more likely to proceed smoothly. So that will result in improved project performance. And again, under social pillar, when you practice ethical and responsible business as a company, you will attract and retain your talent. So as now many employees or talents are considering working with organization with a positive social and environmental impact, with a lot of rooms for training provided, contribute to employee satisfaction and also retention. So next one is when you embrace your ESG or sustainability practices in your operation, in your company's operation, you can drive like innovation. This innovation leading to development of new technologies, materials, and practices. This will enhance your company's competitiveness and position as a forward-thinking industry player. Right. So now it's 10:35. So this is my last slide. Another 2 points. So on the regulatory compliance. By complying or adhering to ESG principles, construction companies can stay ahead of evolving any new regulations related to environmental protection, worker safety, and ethical business conducts. So next one on the positive social impact, the benefit of embracing ESG. Again, under social part, when you attract your talent, you increase your productivity. When you provide all the benefits, all the good and safe working environment to your staff, you increase your productivity. And when you consider aspect of social aspect of ESG in your construction, you can contribute positively to the communities they operate in. As I mentioned before, when you invest in community development, so for example, so this can lead to improved community relation and a sense of social responsibility. So that's the positive social impact from embracing the ESG into your operation. So the last one will be the long-term resilience and value creation. So when you embrace all the sustainability practices, this can contribute to long-term resilience of construction companies, where you promote responsible resource use, where you foster positive relationship with your stakeholders internally and externally, and also when you ensure good governance, you ensure compliance with societal expectations. So when you practice the sustainable practices, this can lead to stable growth of your company and positive impact on the bottom line over the time. All right. So in summary, the integration of ESG into your construction operation is not only beneficial for the environment and society, but also for the company's bottom line. Right. So I think that's all for my presentation today.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alice, for your great presentation. That's you have deliberated a little bit on the ESG metrics for the construction, the benefit out of it, what are the benefit of ESG, and we can see that a lot of benefit by implementing ESG in the construction. Looking for the company benefit to the productivity, for the performance, for the resilient, also everything. I believe there are a lot of benefit once the company had adopt the ESG in their organization. All right. So thank you, Alice, for your presentation. So we go along the way. If you the participant have the question to be put forward to the speakers, so please write in the chat box. So at the end of the session, I will ask the speakers, the relevant speakers, to answer your question. All right. So please stay tuned with us, Alice. So at the end of this, we will have a Q&A session. So we're going to have a third presentation by the speakers, international speaker, I would say, because this speaker is come along direct from the India, so online from the India. So Mr. Anand Sampantraman, right? He's a director of sustainability and industry 4.0 from Tata Consultancy and Services. Hi, Mr. Anand. All right. So all right. So before we start off your presentation, allow me to read through your some introduction to make sure that all the participants know who are the speakers today. All right. So Anand is a director of sustainability and industry 4.0 at Tata Consultancy Services. Serving Asia Pacific customers since 2021. Prior to this, he was head of Internet of Things for Asset Energy Management solution serving global customer at TCS. He has been instrumental in architecting and developing multiple IoT Industry 4.0 platform an analytic model for asset energy management solution, and providing managed services for global clients. He now consults as Asia Pacific client at Tata's consultancy services on sustainability, including net zero ambition and Industry 4.0. So, I mean, Mr. Anand have a two broad of experience in IoT and also the ESG and sustainability. He has held responsibility as plant manager in automotive industry before joining Tata in 2009. He has 2 solution copyright and multiple papers on sustainability related subject. He is a certified Industry 4.0 assessor and a certified manufacturing consultant. Anand is a chemical engineer from AC Tech Anna University, India. A postgraduate in management from Indian Institute of Management. He has also done an executive program in IoT from MIT Sloan School of Management, USA. Right. So Anand have a very vast experience in IoT sustainability. All right. Energy, everything. So he got experience in related to manufacturing as well, consultant. Right. Now he is serving as with the Tata Consultancy Services. So I give to you, Mr. Anand, to give your presentation. All right. So around 40 minutes, maybe. Right. So okay. Please over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Khairul and
Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Prem, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Indeed, it's an interesting to be a speaker three. However, the subject like ESG is so vast and so wide that probably it can accommodate many speakers. That said, I'll start sharing my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Okay. All right, great. We can see clearly.
Right. Thank you.
Right.
While there may be kind of broadly similar slides, I will certainly try to add newer perspectives or additional content. See, one thing we may all want to realize is construction industry is one of a unique industry which today kind of lets live 8 billion people across the world. The entire population of the world is on living on the construction industry place. Having said that, there is a significant importance when it comes to ESG in the context of construction industry. And this importance is continuously growing. And why is it growing? Simply because we probably recognize that after 400 years of industrialization, that across the globe, across the industries, one thing we all in the together recognizes we are not sustainable. For whatever reasons, it could be environmental related metrics, could be social related, governance related, broader sustainable profitability related. Every industry across the globe today agrees that they are not sustainable. And here comes SDG goals, supposedly the broader perspective of habitation that people need to have on this planet. How are we to align to those broader goals at a country level, at a nation level, at a larger global level? And with that said, construction industry plays a significantly important role. It's this industry which consumes materials from wherever it is, be it from the mines, gets it to a construction, gets it to a place where residential people are accommodated, commercial buildings are accommodated, industries are reconstructed. And there's a good amount of life cycle that needs to be considered. And having said that, interesting is also to realize that these are all built on fundamental capitalism of what is called as shareholder capitalism. I'll quickly set the broader context of how the current state of affairs is calling for these kind of standards and frameworks. Saying that today we have whatever 8 billion people in different residential buildings, commercial buildings, and industries constructed. And we have very diverse environment that each of these industries, each of these commercial establishments are all subjected to, given the geography, given the demography, given the functionality that is subjected to. ESG kind of, in some form or the other, captures every activity that enterprise is subjected. Every activity that is involved as a result of an existence of an enterprise is captured in the metrics of ESG. You call it a supplier sending a material from location A to location B, a person moving from an employee moving from a location A to location B. Every activity is to be factored theoretically inside the banner of ESG. And that said, that makes it complex. For whatever reason, the world has been constructed on the principles of linearity. We have all built the industries, we have all built the basic value chain on the principles of linearity, wherein I have an input, I do some process, I have an output, I use the output, I reject the output, I kind of get it to an end of life cycle. And now we all realize that the materials are not going to be available for time immemorial. It's all going to be definite, finite. With these kind of diversity, with these kind of paradox, comes the need for standardization, comes the need for frameworks to even understand where are we, what are we doing, what is that we need to even do, right? What is that we need regulators to enable, government to enable, financiers to enable, and what should I as an industry, what all should I do, what should I prioritize? That's the kind of environment we are all getting into. And in that context, let me share with you how are these standards, frameworks, what has existed, what is emerging. Let me give you a broad snapshot of what's happening in the global scenario. You may want to recognize that there are pockets in the globe where there are more actions happening than otherwise. There is certainly an importance rising all over. Let me give you a quick snapshot on how is the APAC as a geography also kind of panning out on this subject. I'll also touch upon how Malaysia in specific also prioritizing on this. And then with that background, let's get into construction industry. Both my earlier speakers have given phenomenal information content in the context of construction industry. So I'll also add to it, and probably we can all think together as to how is ESG industry going to shape the future of construction industry. While every industry is trying to work out how are they to redefine themselves in the newer world emerging, how is construction industry going to prepare? What are those material topics of priorities? Well aligned to my earlier two speakers. And finally, challenges. There is a lot of challenges simply because we have done all of this in the last few hundreds of years. Right? 400 years is what I used to define from industrialization perspective. If I have to unwind what I've done in 400 years, possibly in the next 40 years, I'm sure we'll all agree it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a challenge which we need to do, giving all credits to the next generation, which is going to, and as one of my speaker beautifully said, it's not what we inherit. It's something that we have borrowed from our next generation. How could we probably give it to them in right form and shape? So that's the background. I'll be very happy to exchange specific ideas, thoughts as we get into question sessions. Please write down your questions. We'll be happy to deliberate. And so a quick on what is ESG. I think both my speakers have spoken beautifully about the broader ESG. I'll only tell you one thing. Any activity that happens because of existence of your entity will come into this. How will it come? In what form and shape will it come? To what boundaries will you define to bring it? It's all subjected to industries. The beauty of today, the situation of ESG or where it stays is these are all voluntary disclosures. On one side, you have regulatory compliance expectations, which I'm sure every enterprise across the globe, it's a must do. Right? It's a must do that they have to maintain the regulatory compliances, which industries are doing. On the other side, the broader subject of ESG is today a voluntary disclosure. And here comes subjectivity. Right? When it's a voluntary disclosure, as an enterprise, how do I define my environment? How do I define my social responsibility? How do I define what are all those I need to govern? There comes the interesting complexity. Environment. Everything that I am affecting from the flora and fauna is an environment. Anything that happens in my supplier, from my raw material, from the source of the material to the end of disposition of my product, until it degrades or until it comes back in a circular economy, everything is a responsibility notionally of an enterprise. Social responsibility. The definition cannot even have boundaries. Right? Everything that impacts every citizen has its own impact? Right? How are we to kind of get into that level of detailing? Governance. We are moving from a capitalism to a stakeholder capitalism. It's no more shareholder centric. You need to get to stakeholder centric governance, which means I need to take care of every interested party's concern. How am I to move towards it? How am I to kind of step up my governance principles to take care of much broader than profitability concerns? And if I do that, I'm sure we'll all agree we'll get into sustainable development wherein we'll live it for the next generations. With that in background, given these broad expectations and challenges, there is a need for standards and framework. The reason is these are standards and frameworks which help us to understand or compare between industries and adjacent industries. At the end of the day, every entity has its own unique reason to exist. Right? Every product has its complementary, supplementary angle to why it exists. Then you say that, how do I compare? How do I compare cement to a glass industry to a, we all know that the combination of all this is what makes it makes the final product. Right? But how do I compare all of these? How do I know what is important? What can I give more leeway from an ESG perspective? What should I probably get in more stringent, more tightened? What has more opportunity to go towards circularity? What does not have? If it does not have, what should I do? If we need to do all these permutations and combinations, you first need data which is reasonably coupled. Right? And here comes these standards. Here comes these frameworks. Again, there is a reason why standards exist, why frameworks exist. And today, as one of the estimates says, there are 600 ESG frameworks. There are 600 ESG frameworks around the world, and each of it has its own need for existence. It all came with various genesis as why is it importance given for climate change? Why is it important given for nature related? Why is it given for social community related? Why is it given from a specific governance related matter? Given these kind of broad things, given that these are industries which cuts across several value chains, there is no one citizen who is not impacted by construction industry. So given all of that, let's first recognize that there are so many frameworks and standards. With that, let me get in to kind of give you another view of the same subject. On one side, we all have a global goal, right? Everyone, individuals have a goal, enterprise have a goal, country has a goal, right? For example, Malaysia, you have taken a wonderful goal of what you want to achieve in 2030. You have a goal as a country. Where do I want to be on energy efficiency? There is a wonderful expectations on diamond standard energy efficiency to be achieved. There's a wonderful expectation on renewable energy adoption to accelerate to me. So as a country level, we have our goals. As an enterprise, we all know we have our. Then comes, how am I to have these kind of data transparently reported? Right? How do I kind of have this auditable, traceable? And it's very glad to know that Malaysian government in April 2023 has kind of announced that they're going to introduce a specific ESG standards framework by end of 2023 for industries in Malaysia. Recently, just 2 months ago, Australia launched. Many of you may know that European Union kind of reasonably kind of leads many of these kind of ventures for various reasons. For over a century, we have all been seeing that European Union has conceived compliance, regulatory related things ahead of the other geographies. And there are some genesis as to why it happened. So as a country, Malaysia, we are expecting the ESG standards framework to come out anytime end of this year. And having said that, Bursa Malaysia was one of those early countries way back in 2016. It came up with the expectations for all the listed companies. I think you have close to 2,000 listed companies today, and all of them on the Bursa. Bursa Malaysia has asked for transparencies, and companies have already started doing it. That's one measure of data for investors to at least look at, for stakeholders to look at, to know how are companies performing, how much are they to disclose as part of their annual report where they make their financial disclosures. Can they also bring in their sustainability metrics related disclosures? What is that? ESG related. So it's all happening. It's all happening across industries. People are started to disclose. How much are they disclosing? As I said, remember, these are voluntary disclosures. Bursa Malaysia is mandatory. The other general reportings like GRI, like SASB, like TCFDs, all these today in the context of Malaysia, it's all voluntary disclosure expectation. And with that said, let's quickly understand, okay, we know there are standards, there are frameworks. Why are they all existing? Why is so many existing? Why are this? Why are enterprises still finding a need for all of them to be together? Will we find standardization somewhere? Theoretically possible. It's possible that there could emerge one universal standard framework eventually, and which is what many of us would like to see. Right? That makes the life of all of us easier. And in that context, you may want to recognize what I said earlier, that Malaysia is coming up with their own country-specific ESG reporting requirement end of 2020. Does it mean that am I okay to only do that? You can, but if you want to have voluntary disclosures like GRI, it does have a global platform. So it all depends. It all depends on the industry. It depends on what influence that it has, what stakeholder does it cater to, in all of that. So as we speak, we have standards. Standards are a bit kind of a technical in nature. They kind of get into specific requirements and metrics, understanding them. For example, GRI, as many of you may know, is one of the EPIC standards expectation on the subject. It kind of helps to classify an industry under the various material topics that will be of relevance to them. For example, I'm whatever, be it a construction industry or within a construction industry, I run buildings as a facility management. So each of these enterprises will have material topics that are relevant to their existence. And these material topics has the relevant whatever KPIs, metrics that needs to be aggregated and reported. So there comes GRI. GRI provides you fairly a decent guideline. It provides you guideline as to what should you consider when you do a disclosure. When I say this material topic of resources is of importance to me, what is it that they are expecting you to disclose? How do you want to define your resource? What in a resource do you want to disclose? To what granularity should you disclose? It kind of gives you all that nice guidelines too. And similarly, from a framework perspective, TCFD, and now we are all talking about TNFD, right? Task Force for Climate-related Financial Disclosures, Task Force for Nature-related Financial Disclosure, even going beyond climate, considering other diversities. So frameworks are a bit broader. They have a broader, bigger focus. They kind of try to understand how are you kind of looking at information? What kind of information are you dabbling with? How are you kind of getting to interpret all of them into your enterprise value chain, things like that. So we saw the breadth of the standards frameworks. How are they kind of complementing, supplementing? With so much of standards and framework, one will certainly realize that, okay, with so many standard framework, how do you even compare? How do you even know if somebody is reporting on a standard framework that they are doing great, they are not doing great? How do you even know? Here comes rankers and raters. Right? These rankers and raters are another institutions. They watch all of these data, and they watch these data over time. Right? What did you disclose in 2016? What did you disclose in 2017, 18, 22, 23? And that gives them a view as to how is the organization progressing. Right? And that gives them a way to profile you. On one side, standards help them to compare. On the other side, over a period of time, they analyze these data to see how can I profile an industry. And why do they do that? This is to kind of give an idea to the investors, to the stakeholders as to how sustainable are you. What is sustainability? Again, a debatable topic. It's such a broad topic. Sustainability does need to involve profitability. No doubt, no enterprise can say that I do ESG and will I be successful? Profitability is certainly the breadwinner. So profitability, keeping ESG is what every enterprise would want to do. And how do we do that? There are several limitations, challenges. We are going to see that. So rankers and raters kind of give a very interesting perspectives, and each of them again have different roles. Each of them have their own specializations. How are you to be ranked and rated from a financial perspective, financial aligned to, say, for example, climate change perspective? How are you to be purely analyzed from an environmental performance perspective? How are you to be analyzed from a social responsibility perspective, given that if industry has more of community related impacts, how are you? Here it comes. And again, my earlier speakers beautifully spoke about the concept of impact, right? At the end of the day, what impact do I create on society? What impact do I create on environment? How are these impact to be analyzed, ranked, rated? Here are these stakeholders who do all of it. So on one side, enterprises have regulatory reportings done, voluntary disclosures done. We have these ranking raters who kind of give a view. And with all of these information, investors sit on top of all of this to understand and advance. So that's the broader ESG for you, and each of us in wherever in the value chain of industry we are, we can interpret it for ourselves. So with that, I'll get into quickly give you a view of how the global scenario is panning out. I should tell you that the importance to this subject has been growing. Why do I say that? 95% of the companies have increased their disclosure data points. As I said, for example, in Malaysia, Bursa has insisted for 2016. So we have 7 years of data. Similarly, across the globe, based on when their securities have insisted, we have that data. And analyzing this data, the trend clearly shows that enterprises have increased their disclosure. What does it mean that they are doing good, bad? I'm not commenting. All I can say is ESG related data disclosures have increased. And when they increase, generally these reports are all annual reporting requirements. And we also realize that if you're going to report once in a year, how is that even going to be useful for you to improve upon? And here comes the need for possibly, again, as my first speaker spoke, the importance for you to have a proper platform, a proper digitalization solution to really know what is happening on a real time or near real time, as the case may be, to understand, is there some place where I can optimize? Where can I improve? As I start to report my ESG data, first thing to recognize is I have my raters, rankers who are watching me. As they watch, they are watching me year on year. When they watch year on year, they certainly look for, is the enterprise improving? If improving, where are they improving? Where are they spending? Where are they not spending? What is the activity initiative they are taking, not taking? All that comes up. So a broader view, the total disclosures have increased. And when we see the disclosure increase, we are getting to understand that the total global ESG assets that are disclosed have significantly increased in the last decade. And that kind of gives you a feeling that the sensitiveness, the importance of this topic is certainly growing. And let me quickly give you a financial perspective. At the end of the day, we may all want to recognize that one of the fundamental problems, while technically the problem is around materiality, circularity kind of expectations, and the other side is who is going to fund it? Who is going to fund me to have this transition? Right? I am a brownfield side. How am I to become green? Theoretically, we all know net zero buildings are coming, net zero concepts are emerging. So it's all about who is going to fund. Are the funds flowing? Are we getting the kind of getting financial products which is going to help me to accelerate this? The broader the trend shows that it is. I'm sure many of us may also know that this is a challenge. Are the right people getting the right funds? What is required to get the right funds? And these and that. There are several debates we can have around that. But the broader trends show that sustainable bonds market, you call it green bonds, social bonds, sustainable bonds, that market has kind of grown by 7 to 8 times in the last 10 years. So it's kind of getting towards a $1 trillion kind of a mark. And the ratio between the conventional debt bonds to green bonds, that's interesting, right? So close to 10% of the bonds are going towards sustainable bonds, and we definitely expect this to grow, or the world needs this to grow. So On the broader side, standard disclosures are there, rankers, raters are there. Financials are kind of, financial momentum is gaining. It's kind of gaining and growing. So now put this all together and avail the benefit in terms of financing, and these all needs to get into execution. So that's the broader thing in which we are. And let me touch upon where is the money to go? Where is these monies going? One, carbon, climate, those are broad subject where the monies are. There are taxonomies which kind of guides you in this context. Some of you may recognize that there is a very interesting concept coming from the financial institutions around taxonomies. One of the fairly mature taxonomy in the world is the European Union taxonomy. ASEAN taxonomy is also coming very interesting. It's kind of aligned to European taxonomy with some kind of nativity intertwined. So that said, how do you leverage your ASEAN taxonomy, get your whatever metrics right, and get the appropriate fundings and whatever financial enablements made to address the impact that we want to address, right? The ESG impact that we want to address. And from a supply chain perspective, again, supply chain is a very broad terminology in this context. It kind of gets into the entire value chain. When I say value chain, it's all the way from your supplier to your customer's customer. How are we to kind of fund the transitioning, fund the decarbonization? How do I start with my own core operations first to decarbonize and then extend it into the other? So that's where we are. And we all will agree that when we talk about all this, disclosure is important. We spoke enough about standards and reporting frameworks that are available. And finally, especially for the construction industry, circularity is one of the kind of is a secret sauce or a sweet spot. How do we construct a circularity? How do we kind of get back our material back to utility value? How do you kind of establish a closed loop cycle? How do you kind of have a life cycle assessment from design to building to constructions to operations to end of life retirement? How can I bring it back? How do I kind of have those kind of asset recovery services enabled? If as an industry, we can move up on the circularity profile, that's going to have significant impact from a business perspective, purely both from an economics perspective and from various value creation perspective. So having said this, let me also give you a view of the various services that are today available when you want to put together what enterprises today will need, right? You call it a net zero path, you call it a social responsibilities commitment you have, or excellence in corporate governance. So we have niche sustainability and ESG service providers in every geography. We are finding this. We're seeing that this is growing. It's steadily growing. We have management consultancies and large professional services which kind of extend from their audit services. How do I extend my current financial audit services into ESG audits is something that's happening. There are regional sustainability and ESG consultants. The importance of regional comes in the fact that industries in a region have their own regional regulatory expectations, which kind of adds to the importance of the subject. There are international engineering and infrastructure consultants who are also aligning to ESG when they start from the choice of material, from the whatever technologies and methodologies that they adopt in the subjects. There are diversified sustainability and ESG consultants. There are international consultants. There are international sustainability consultants, which kind of covers beyond ESG, right? When you say sustainability, I think again, one of my speakers spoke very nice about that, in the sense that sustainability is kind of over-encompassing ESG, including economics, profitability, and stakeholder capitals. So these are the broad players, just to give you an idea about what all will you, either you may have to have these kind of in-house, or you may want to leverage appropriately to construct what it needs. And important to also realize that it's an ecosystem play. It's not like one part of the value chain can establish these aspirations without the other parts, right? So it's an ecosystem play. There is a need for the entire value chain to come together to kind of realize these ESG aspirations of an enterprise. So that let's quickly get to understand where is APAC, right? Where is Asia Pacific as a geography? This will give you a quick view as to how are different countries being enabled. Predominantly, most of the countries' fundamental entities which enable are the securities. So in Malaysia, the Bursa Malaysia and the Bank Negara Malaysia are those who are calling for the first data points. So they have already made their shout way back in 2016 for listed entities to report, and similarly across the globe. In fact, today Singapore Exchange has already launched a platform which will kind of aggregate data. They have, along with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, they have launched a data platform which will aggregate data from various enterprises to get transparent on these things. So the regulators are pushing for more and more data, and this will only increase in our expectation. And how are industries responding to? So if you take a look at this slide, you'll realize that across the various countries, adoption to GRI, SDG, ISOs, we all know about ISO, right? I'm sure that's well-known standard or standards practices that many enterprises across the world has. So GRI and SDG is certainly gaining importance. So in Malaysia, if you see 84% of the enterprises or the top 100 enterprises in Malaysia are already reporting on GRI. 92% are already aligning to SDGs. The interesting thing here is while enterprises in these countries are reporting, one thing you may want to remember is all of these are voluntary disclosures. When I say voluntary disclosures, enterprises define the boundary and scope in which they discuss. Right? When I disclose voluntarily, I have a choice to define what I want to disclose. So the current situation is such that enterprises have started disclosing. They have started defining the boundaries, defining the scope. They have started sharing the information. And as this information gets shared year over year, there is a view as to how these informations are improving, whatever the case may be, how our organizations disclosures seen, and that the rankers and raters organizations take a look at it, and they have their own ways to analyze, and they have their own frameworks on which they evaluate and profile. So a broader view of countries across Asia Pacific adopting to GRI, aligning to SDGs is something that you can broadly see. And having said that, Malaysia as a country is doing exceedingly well in the sense that 97% of the top 100 companies are already disclosing sustainability in their annual reports. 97 out of 100 companies are already disclosing, and that certainly shows a very good trend, right? Very healthy trend. This really helps, right? When everybody discloses, helps in mutual how can they all find synergy, how they can all supplement, complement. And as I said, it's an ecosystem play. Sustainability is not that one enterprise can achieve by itself. It certainly needs for participation across the value chain to emerge. And when we do that is when we actually get to have the right transparencies, get the right economics to do all of these will emerge. So that's a broader view on Malaysia. You have the Bursa, you have the BNM, strongly advocating for these requirements, and enterprises are responding. And into the construction industry, I think we all been recognized that it's building everywhere, right? There's no place where there's no building, be it residential building, commercial building, or industrial facilities. That's what is probably one of the largest assets on the planet. So that said, 40% of the global contribution from energy consumption, as we all know, comes from the construction industry. Significant amount of water usage, 1/4 water usage, 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. So that this puts us right on the importance on the subject. Right? This is one of the core industry which definitely needs to establish the principles of circularity, establish probably ecosystem which can embrace the emerging concepts. So that's it. The way we are seeing the evolution is one, certainly a need for standardization, commoditizations across ESG topics. integrating into the entire value chain. This is one of those industries which has the entire life cycle view, starting from design to disposition of material post the retirement of a building, be it 30 years, be it 50 years as a life of the building. How are you to kind of bring back integrated approaches? And finally, how do you have innovation-led transformation happening in industry? Whatever we do from efficiency perspective, improve effectiveness, improve efficiency, can only take us to some extent. Even if I am to be at a diamond state of energy efficiency, I'm limited by the best of available technologies. But probably there's a need for innovation. And there comes probably one of the most powerful and emerging on, which is kind of very close to me, the concept of prosumerism. Buildings are no more consumers. They don't need to necessarily consume energy, consume water, consume utility that are required. They can become producers thanks to those micro wind turbines, solar rooftops, kind of biomass kind of thing. Local communities can kind of construct their own energy ecosystem and kind of get towards a net zero kind of a concept. That's kind of emerging. And we definitely are looking to see this industry adopting to that. And with the advent of technology like 5G or 6G, the kind of interconnected experiences that the construction industry can have can be really, really interesting to see. So what are all those material issues? Getting specific on the issues. Again, my earlier speaker spoke. Environmental, needless to say, GHG emissions. Clean technologies are going to be interesting to watch. There are several clean technologies already emerged. Waste management, resource management, material management in general, concepts of circularity are all going to be important. Mineral extraction, we know that's one of those industries which has a significant amount of extraction requirement from natural resources. How are that to be handled? Our biodiversity is to handle, right? Another sensitive and interesting subject that's emerging for the construction industry is on land use and biodiversity related balancing and things like that. And going to social, while everybody talks about environmental, given the economic implication that the environmental vector has, social kind of brings in much, much more important. Given to get people centric, to get human centric, given the growing importance of human rights related, fundamental health and safety, I'm sure industries have been trying best to see what best they can, and they are continuously improving, as we all know. But we are going beyond that, going beyond in terms of human rights related, be it freedom of association, labor related, contracted labor, child labor, forced labor. There are very, very new dimensions that are emerging just to ensure that everybody's, every stakeholder's human-centric needs are addressed appropriately. And when they say that, it's not only about your own operations. Important to recognize that be it environment, be it social, it's not only about your own operation that you should be interested or focused on. An enterprise needs to focus on the entire value chain on these subjects. The enterprise is responsible for social commitment of not only their employees, their premises. They are responsible for their supplier, right? Their customer, whatever is the end user. They have to be responsible for entire value chain, both from a social community perspective and from environmental perspective. And there is where governance gets to the next level. Conventional governance of enterprises, whatever they have done, is not sufficient when we are now talking about integrated environmental social governance. So governance becomes extremely interesting and critical. Again, one of my speakers wonderfully touched about the importance of board composition on governance, right? We are talking about some of the countries are now talking about ESG certified board of directors. But the importance is there needs to be someone viewing through the lens of environmental social governance. So all these are certainly They are important topics. Industries are giving importance. It's only growing, and I'm sure with the growing importance and the growing need of expectation of stakeholders, they will kind of adopt to various technologies and tools to make it more effective. And let's get a little bit closer to the metrics for construction industries. You call it GHG emissions from scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, as I said, is gaining importance from the value chain. In fact, people have already started talking about scope 4. Scope 4 or even scope 5 may emerge. Why is that? Because fundamental when people disclose, as I said, being voluntary disclosure, there's kind of a good amount of greenwashing that takes place. They enterprise kind of they reported, is there a kind of subjectivity? Is there a possibility of double materialities? So those are all some gray areas which are to be addressed, and the need for scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 transparency, the need for adopting to green building related. There are several certifications again, right? There are by geography, again, Malaysia has its own certification expectations. There are global certifications, be it green certification, LEED certification. All of these kind of gives you some fundamental design principle considerations. But is that alone enough? There certainly needs to be something beyond that from an operational perspective. Beyond that, from an end of life perspective, all of that is something we are sure we are all going to see it increasingly getting familiar. So material management, needless to say, there are several R&D efforts happening. The world of quantum computing is probably going to give some breakthrough in the context of choice of material related considerations. The world is watching for such things. Life cycle analysis. Can we look at life cycle analysis as a means to identify, is there an opportunity to optimize from a GHG perspective? That's something many enterprises are working on. Waste management and circularity are definitely the fundamental levers to kind of bring in very interesting business economics value proposition. Clean technology adoption, as I said, net zero buildings. How do I kind of conceive a net zero building? Right? How do I kind of get the supply and demand for a building matched or even exceeded? Can I have a positive building? Theoretically, it's all possible. How to do that? How do we get towards that? How do we get the funding, financing for that? How do we establish all this and establish a maintenance system around all of this, governance system around all of these? I'm sure every country across the globe is working out on each of these. And let's give due importance related to human capital development. There's good amount of employability, green employability related opportunities out there. Given the kind of funds that needs to go into these kind of subjects, there is definitely a green economy which is possibly emerging. And when we do that, let's see, there is due importance to be given from a labor management perspective, given the intensive industry that we are talking about. Labor management, human rights related are all significantly gaining importance. And no second thought, health and safety, well-being of every individuals are extremely important and are kind of to be given the due importance. And finally, ethics and compliance, regulatory compliance, tax compliance are something the world always know. The newer thing that is coming up is governance, and ESG-led governance is kind of more and more getting prominent as we speak. With that said, let's quickly kind of catch on what are the challenges, right? There's so much diverse standards, so much diverse frameworks. Where are we to see the challenges? Let me just highlight 6 challenges. I know my earlier speakers spoke about the benefits. Benefits is all around getting to have the sustainability strategy and the business strategy aligned. If that aligns, I'm sure enterprises are going to see phenomenal advantages and really get sustainable, right? So from a challenges perspective, the need for ESG standards is definitely there are. We all know there are so many standards, so many frameworks. There are very different accounting methodologies, calculation methodologies, double materialities kind of subjects. How do you kind of, how does the industry ensure that it kind of gives the message, kind of shows continuous improvement, keeps it in line with the industry expectation, regulators expectation, government mandates, their own goals, all of that. And finally, important is how are they to ensure the right level of transparencies, which gets them the right investor attention. At the end of the day, if you need to have a good financial assistance and support from funding, investors are certainly looking at ESG as the important metric. Over and above techno-economic considerations, ESG considerations are significantly growing around. And we know that there are so many standards and framework. How do we interpret them in the context of the entity, in the context of their value chain, is the interesting challenge every enterprise is putting their heads around. And having said that, financial impacts of these, there's a good amount of financial impact. The reason being, there are sustainable bonds, green bonds, ESG funds, social funds available. What disclosures are we to make? What granularity are we to make? What trends are we to show? What kind of business value proposition are we to show? Which qualifies for that? What programs qualify? Does energy efficiency program qualify? Renewable energy program qualify? Does electrification program qualify? On what condition does it qualify? All these are something very important. And when we do that, how are we to keep the performance valuation? There is an importance for verification to happen, right? Are the funding going for the right purpose, what it is intended to do? And how is that to be verified? How is that goes by the measurement and verification protocols that are established? And there are several valuation agents who are around these subjects to kind of help the right interpretations and understandings to be. So with that, let me summarize. ESG, as we all know, is a collection of corporate data for performance evaluation criteria across the value chain for environmental, social, and governance. When I say governance, governance includes environmental, social, and broader economic governance also. There are over 600 ESG frameworks around the world, kind of what we saw. Malaysia government is likely to introduce a new standards on ESG by the end of 2023. That's kind of going to give a good clarity to the industries in the geography. We all know that construction industry contributes to 40% of the global energy consumption and 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions. So we are one of those core industries which certainly has a role to play in this larger subject. Investors are indeed increasingly demanding for cleaner data, more transparency and traceability-led transparency. Several OPEX and CAPEX-led decarbonization efforts are on the cards. I'm sure every enterprise is kind of chalking their path, investing on OPEX-led initiatives for improving operational excellence, CAPEX-led for operational excellence. How can they make their fundamental operations more cost competitive and thereby getting it more leaner from an energy resources and water and waste generation perspective? And finally, when we do all of this, we may recognize and realize the importance of organization change management, right? A change that is required to embrace ESG practices, to bring in ESG as a tenet underlying the already existing productivity, quality. We all know importance of productivity, quality, throughput, yield, delivery kind of KPIs. How can ESG be brought into each of these? How can I see ESG linked productivity, ESG linked quality, ESG linked delivery, ESG linked services and products? How do we see that? And that's the future we are all emerging into. So look forward to playing our small role as Tata Consultancy Services towards building sustainable enterprises in the construction industry. And how can we embrace ESG to future-proof our enterprises? We'd be happy to share our thoughts and be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anand, for your presentation. All right. So you have mentioned about the overview, the internationally perspective, right from some of the benchmarking. You have mentioned about the data requirements, the criteria, the performance, and also the last but not least is actually the change management of the organization towards the implementation of ESG. Without that, we can do the ESG, right? So thank you very much for your presentation. So now we would like to open for the floor for any question and to be answered by our speakers. So any question from the participant out there? If not, let me kickstart of the first question to the first speaker. Mr. Faiz Azri is no longer with us because he got another meeting outside. So he was replaced by his counterpart, Mr. Kevin Raj, right? To answer any question from the participant. So now allow me to ask a question, the first question to Kevin Raj. Kevin Raj actually is a ESG consultant with Lab Energy, right? So I believe the Kevin have got quite experience in dealing with the ESG. So the first question actually would like to, as Faiz was mentioned about the challenges that facing by the organization. Actually, the communication the communication is a big challenges. So how does the organization should deal with the communication and also to leverage on ESG and success to make in the current market? So Kevin, can you answer this question?
Definitely. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
So I think some of the things that companies can leverage on are things like operational efficiency, right? Essentially looking at cost savings. How can they maximize efficiency while minimizing impact on the environment? And then I think it's talked a bit about unique value proposition. I think it's a known thing that consumers especially are willing to pay a premium up to 20 to 30% for a product. And then, of course, mitigating social and environmental risks. This could also be on the PR front, the communications front. I think during COVID, we've had some Malaysian companies being scrutinized for their social risk or social OSHA-related crisis. So to mitigate this risk and, of course, preserving a most, I guess, in a way, ESG-centric image in front of its stakeholders, there's something to be looked at as well. Lastly, future-proofing the business. Besides climate and social risk, we also look at mitigating risk at CBAM and climate-related risk and even carbon tax that might come. On the communication front, based on my previous roles before through Strategic Consultancy, we had clients actually come, not just look in terms of ESG disclosures when it comes to reporting or statements, but also perhaps even performing exercises through their social media. We had this particular client who were trying to communicate their ESG narrative or even their sustainability initiatives through their social media because they have the relevant stakeholders, those mediums. So these are some of the ways you could leverage some of the benefits and also communicate effectively without appearing like you're greenwashing. Yeah, it has to be backed by data at the end of the day.
All right, thank you, Kevin. All right, for your answers. So, okay, we go to the second speaker, Alice. All right, so as what Anand mentioned, there are hundreds of ESG rating in the world. So which one is the most reliable rating tools that are looking for the ESG? Can you enlighten us about the ESG rating agency out there?
Okay, so indeed, yeah, there are a lot of rating agencies and frameworks and standards we can refer on. The question about which one is the most reliable, I think is not on the agency, the rating agency out there, but is on your data. So if your data is reliable, so any rating standards or framework you use, you will have like good rating score on that because data is the most important. So on the rating agency, I would say they are all reliable because they are all globally and internationally recognized. So I believe that all the rating methodologies are quite similar. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Right. So the Anand, Mr. Anand. All right. So you have presented about the challenges, the importances of the ESG, and particularly in the construction. So actually, we want to know why does the ESG look very important nowadays, especially after the COVID-19. So I think there is some of the pressures, international demand for the ESG as overall for the construction. Can you give us some of information about that?
Thank you. There are a couple of broader trends in the background that we may want to recollect. One, we all know the climate change related the COP, which brought in the need for climate change related alignment. We know that industries are all committing to what we call as science-based targets for climate change. On the other side, we may also know that given the interconnected world we are all living today, in terms of commerce and trade happening across the various geographies, there is this explosion of expectations from a social responsibility perspective. So we have huge expectations from environment, climate change related perspective. Given the interconnected world, there is a huge expectation from social responsibility perspective. And this redefines the existence of an enterprise. ESG very soon is no more going to be only regulator-led. It's going to get mainstream into the business strategy. It's already entering the boardrooms. It's very soon going to find the appropriate levers to get it into operationalization. And when we say that, we may recognize that while there are multiple challenges, financial challenges is one, operational challenges is another. So given this environment and given that there's a need for enterprises in the planet to get sustainable, we only expect this importance to grow.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anand. All right. Okay, we go back to the Kevin. The question from the participant I can see from the chat box. So Ms. Wai Yi want to know about the Malaysia Renewable Energy Roadmap. In short, MyRER. Actually, this was, I think, the new economic model that was launched by the Malaysian government recently that looks into the how the promoting the green growth and climate resilient through the National Transition Energy Plan. So I think a good question for us to know how does it impact to the energy consumption in the construction industry. So Kevin, can you give some of the updates on this initiative?
Yeah, another great question there. Thank you there. And this is a relative to new roadmap. The first one has just been launched like a couple of months back. And this is something we as well as ESG consultants, we're trying to look into that and how we could actually help our partners as well through this. I think as some of our speakers have mentioned, the construction industry, unfortunately, is a heavy contributor to energy consumption. However, Mr. Anand has mentioned, they could also be a positive contributor, right? To become carbon positive and even contribute to energy towards the grid and so on. So these are some, I think looking at the energy transition roadmap, there are certain levers that we're looking at. So I could see construction companies being in development sector and so on, actually utilizing some of these levers and actually diversifying their model into looking into energy transition levers like carbon capture mechanisms, solar energy perhaps, that's a very normal one, and hydroelectric. And currently, I think there's a lot of movement in terms of hydrogen going on in Sarawak, a lot of investments going on there. So I think major players in the construction and development industry can definitely look into that to further elevate or become a catalyst towards achieving Malaysia's carbon neutrality goal in 2050 by utilizing some of the levers in the roadmap.
All right. So thank you, Kevin. Right. I think Kevin have answered a good answer to the participant. Right. Okay. Go back to the next question by Raylan. Right. So I think maybe Alice can answer this question. Right? Is it okay? He asked about the construction company which ESG framework, i.e., GRI, SDG, or etc., is commonly referred to or more likely used by most of the construction companies, and why does it refer to this framework? So maybe Alice can say something about this.
Yeah. So for construction company in Malaysia, as what presented by Mr. Anand, the analysis, the on Malaysia acceptance by GRI, by SDG. So mostly GRI is the most used framework by Malaysian company to report on their accessibility performance under Bursa. So again, you can refer to any framework for your ESG to guide you to implement ESG initiatives. But the recommended framework by Bursa is GRI.
All right. So that's the option for the
Yeah,
recommended part
the
for by
recommended but
GRI.
not compulsory.
Yeah, it's not compulsory. So you
Yeah.
can use anything that you want. You would like to use that. All right.
And
Okay.
to echo with the SDG is basically not the framework. Is SDG is basically the goals and
Yep.
intergovernmental commitment, meaning
Yep.
that country commitments lah. So Malaysia committed, one of the signatories country committed to UN SDG, the 17 goals there. Yeah, so that's not on the reporting framework, but you can have the SDG as to guide you on what initiative you you need to do, you need to integrate in your operations to align with the UN SDG. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Alice. All right. Before I pass question to the Anand, so I have one question. All right. So I want to ask about the Indian government initiative that taken for the ESG, because as what Malaysian budget 2023 for this year, they are look into the developing the standard as what you mentioned on ESG. But how about the Indian government initiative looking into the ESG standard? Maybe you can give some information about this.
Sure. Thank you. See, one thing, like in other countries, the securities, the stock exchange securities have started insisting. India has a separate reporting requirement called as BRSR reporting, which Indian listed companies are adhering to from 2022 onwards. There is no, to my knowledge, until now, there's no construction industry specific. There are listed company expectations in the context of sustainability, which is the BRSR report. Will India come up with a specific ESG reporting requirement? Possible. So far, we have not seen any such announcements. European Union has announced where some 7 years ago. Australia has announced 3 months ago, and it's probably, in fact, right after release, they have again revised it. And now Malaysia has committed for end of 2023. India government, will they have a separate ESG report? Will they align to ISSB, SASB, GRI? We are waiting to understand.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anand. All right. So the next question by the Hana Liana Lee binti Abdullah from SIMA, all right, Malaysia. So good. The question goes to Mr. Anand. Which country is leading in the ESG from the construction sector, mainly for the construction? So you want to know from the international perspective from you, from point of view, right? So what is the lead? Who are the country leading in ESG right now?
Broadly, European Union has been leading on this subject due to various reasons, given their geographical, economic, and social related considerations. But in the recent times, given the geopolitical situation that has emerged, and given that Europe has significant reliance on gas, right? Their heating related thing is entirely on gas. And given their geo expectation, is given the dependency on gas and their inability to go towards electrification at the rate that they wanted, they are also challenged. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that there have been probably more carbon footprinting emerging than before due to the recent geopolitical tension in that geography and the energy crisis that is growing. So is there a comparison? Trend-wise, possibly we can see more net zero buildings conceptually emerging. Have they declared? Have they got to a scale? Not really. You will also find very interesting case studies on net zero in Japan geography. Europe, UK, Japan, there are more and more emerging concepts of net zero. Can we go towards positive energy buildings? Conceptually, it's emerging. There are disclosed or certified net zero buildings, both in Europe, in London, and in Japan. Only thing is, have they got to a scale? I think that's where we are all wanting to see how does it get to a scale? Is that going to be sustainable at scale? We all know that many of the products in the net zero concept have still not seen a life cycle, right? You call it energy storage system, you call it these micro turbines. We haven't seen the life cycle of these products itself. So all these are wait and watch. It's happening technologically. Viability has come. Economic viability has not come across geographies. It is going to take some time. Depending on the nature of building, the functionality, there are possible investments which have gone. Will it become main scale? Will it get to mass, large scale adoption for all of us to experience and embrace that? Probably, in my opinion, towards 2050, we should see that more.
Yeah, okay. So in the context of Malaysian construction industry, how does you can see the effect to the Malaysian construction sector as compared to the
See, two things I find definitely Malaysia is keeping speed is one, Bursa has been insisting on data from 2016. One. Second, as I said, 97% of the top 100 companies are already kind of reporting on sustainability in their annual reports. See, the interesting thing is once you start reporting, you're on monitor. You're going to be monitored, right? Once you start reporting, an enterprise is on the monetary lens of various stakeholders, and you have to necessarily keep adding to it or give justifications if you're not adding, things like that. So that kind of starts putting pressure on enterprises to also keep up to those expectations. So the earlier you start, you're kind of indirectly kind of enforcing several things, and Malaysia as a country is doing it exceedingly well, in my opinion. And I'm sure these adoptions will only increase. And I probably don't have specific data points as to where is construction industry in Malaysia. Those specific level of data has to come once more and more companies. So I'm now talking about only the top 100 companies, right? While you have close to 2,000 listed companies, the statistics is at 100 level. It hasn't gone beyond that to get to that level of classification.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Anand. All right. So we go to the next question from Mr. Chua. Is the ESG related construction material can be found in the CIDB website? At this moment, it's no specific research or data finding on the ESG particularly, but the some of the information on what we call it inventories of embodied carbon. Yes, CIDB has uploaded all the list of the embodied carbon material, list of product, green product in the website, and as well as we have did a research study on the greenhouse gases in the construction industry in Malaysia, as well as we have some of the carbon emission studies on looking into the comparison between the traditional way of method and with the industrialized bidding system. So, but in ESG, in the specific one, we at this moment we don't have any kind of ESG report at this moment. But going forward, we are trying to put forward some of the studies looking into the development of the framework, the roadmap for the construction ESG, right? Is ESG in the construction industry. Okay, so the next question. All right, so I think we can go to the next question to the Kevin. All right, so I think I want to read the question from the Husna. Okay, Husna Hayati Ahmad. How ESG can be implemented in the construction of affordable housing in Malaysia? So do you think any ESG potential to be implemented in the housing scheme in Malaysia?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Before going to that question, I'm just going to add on a bit to what Mr. Anand was sharing about the gap in the construction sector. I may not have exact data at the moment, but largely the trend in Malaysia, I would say, the construction sectors largely behind in terms of ESG disclosures and meeting relevant ESG ratings. There are a couple of trailblazers that are doing really well. Notably, you have brands like Marsing and Gamuda are doing extremely well from my experience auditing them before. However, they've still got a lot of work to do in general. And two things I think we could start is building capacity and training, basically, building capacity from the top down and then eventually setting up your materiality assessments and then going about your disclosures and so on. I think just doing the basics at the moment would go a long way towards facilitating the gap that we have in Southeast Asia. Coming back to the question, I think, again, ESG as a concept is super fluid. It could be, you can look at it from a macro level all the way down to a more micro level. As with any project, you would first dissect it into the E, S, and G component, right? For instance, for a affordable housing, what are the environmental aspects you could look at? Perhaps having a greenhouse gas, a composting bin might not be very applicable for affordable housing, but those are things you could look like. Even basic infrastructure like recycling can be looked into, and then look at the energy management system aspect. How could they optimize the energy usage of the building? And the S part, affordable housing as it is a social initiative being conducted, but how can there be, I know of NGOs conducting like capacity building for relevant stakeholders in this affordable housing initiatives in Malaysia, how we could dive into that. And then social also includes the construction of the place itself. Is it a safe place for the workers to work for, and things like that. And governance, of course, is more of the internal side of the businesses, how the supply chain transparency and so on. So definitely ESG can be implemented to a project, be it a macro or micro size, but context is important here depending on the industry and the geography and the stakeholders that we're dealing with. Hope that answers your question.
All right. All right. Thank you, Kevin, for your answers. All right. So I think to Alice, a question. Right. So the question, yeah, well, Alice is a green rating tool assessor for the MyCRES and Green RE. So do we need to set up a team, ESG team for that for specific team for look into the company to manage ESG? What do you opinion? What is your opinion about this?
Okay. Do we need to set up a dedicated ESG team in your company to manage the ESG, right? So basically, it's up to you. It depends, for me, it depends on your size or the company size. So if you're this SME, so you don't have enough manpower to have a dedicated ESG team, but you can have like, you can set up a sustainability working committee comprising of each department or operational divisions rep to manage the ESG. So for example, the ESG environmental part mostly on the operation and how you do your projects, right? On the QS part, on the selection of the material, the embodied carbon on the material. Then on the social part, the safety and health team can have a lead or representative from safety and health team. And also the governance part mostly on the policy making divisions, COSACs or quality department. So you can have a committee there. So you don't need to set up a dedicated ESG team if you are a small and medium enterprise. But in a big company, large company, as recommended in the Bursa sustainability reporting guideline, sustainability guideline. So Bursa recommended to have like 2 committees consisting of the sustainability steering committees comprising of the senior management and also the sustainability working committee, who are the ones who are doing the initiative, the one who will implement the initiative, the sustainability initiatives. Yeah, but it depends on the size of the company, I would say.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Alice. Right. So the question from Raylan, right? Any plan or initiative from CIDB to assist contractor to implement ESG? Yet we don't have so far any framework looking into the ESG for the construction. But CIDB, on behalf of CIDB, I'll try to answer. But we are we plan to come out with some study on the looking into this, how best we can assist the contractors for especially for the local contractors in Malaysia, because at this moment the ESG is implementing for the big contractors rather than the small medium enterprise and the small contractors. So I think sooner or later CIDB will put forward this ESG as a main game changer for the construction industry, right? So okay. For last question to the Anand, maybe last question. What is your aspiration of ESG, looking for the ESG implementation globally? That is it, and also your aspiration to look into the Malaysian construction sector in the future for the ESG. What's your aspiration?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly a great question. See, one thing is to look at it integrated. Look at it life cycle, look at it integrated, and certainly look for operational excellence. I think we all will agree that first thing first is cost optimization. Let me first do that and then look for innovation-led transformation. Let my operations be made more sustainable. What do we mean by that? It's excellence. It's excellence in operations. Leverage technology, which can enable that. You call it 5G technology, you call it IoT technology, you call it data digitization technology. Leverage technology, get towards operational excellence. Will digital twin get you operational excellence? If it will get you, do that. Asset level digitization help you to get excellent, do that. Whatever will get you to operational excellence, cost optimization, leveraging on available digital data technologies should be the first thing. And then let's see, at the right time, we need to look for innovation-led transformation. Whatever it is, be it biomass, be it solar, renewable, energy efficiency, electrification. There is so much of ideas out there. I'm sure everybody will agree. So when you do that, we have to see, can I look at it at a broader scale, which will get me economics? And that's where comes integrated approach, getting you the benefit. Life cycle approach, integrated approach, ecosystem enabled. It's not that I do it alone. I need to do it with my complementary, supplementary ecosystem so that I get the right economics and viability. And if you can get to such kind of ecosystem play, it's very likely that these can get much faster than otherwise.
All right, thank you. Very great aspiration.
Probably another interesting concept that's emerging is return on sustainability. We all know return on investment for whatever conventional projects we have all been through. Return on sustainability calls for what is called as internal carbon pricing. Can I put a carbon price to every program that I want my whatever stakeholders to run? And knowing that carbon number, remember, very soon you're going to have, Bursa is going to launch the carbon market. Every ton of carbon is $1. There is a market which goes for $100. There's a market which goes for $10. So if I now need to see all my programs through the lens of ESG and see if I can save 10 tons, it means I can probably save some few $100s. And that can be factored in your pricing and whatever. And you can also see how can you classify your programs for ESG-led incentivizations, which is emerging. So we have to educate ourselves to see, can I classify myself for right funding? Can I prepare myself for the carbon market that is coming? Can I look at my initiatives of asset energy efficiency, operational excellence led, leverage the existing available technologies, and then parallelly look for innovation-led transformation, bring ecosystem whenever you talk about innovation to get the right economics at scale. All these are some things that's going to happen. How faster? It all depends on regulators and financials and things like that.
Agree.
Look
All
forward.
right. All right, thank you. And then, okay, 1 minute to Kevin to wrap up, or maybe what your aspiration towards the ESG in the construction, right? Kevin.
I think not just the construction industry, but Malaysia as a whole has got a lot to do. But we're going in the right direction with the new National Energy Transition Roadmap, hoping to have multi-stakeholder collaboration towards achieving our carbon neutrality goals by 2050. And this can't be done alone by a single party. It requires multi-stakeholder collaboration, and hopefully in the foreseeable future, we'll make significant progress in the arena. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. All right, so Alice, last words from you for ESG. Alice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Last word from you. Only ESG. What your wish list or aspiration towards the ESG?
So my wish list,
Right.
coming from environmental accessibility practitioner, right? I would
Yeah.
love to see a standard of benchmarking, carbon benchmarking, because most of the environmental aspect on ESG is calculated or accounted under GHG emissions. So I would like to see Malaysia's own standard for companies' carbon rating. So GHG rating. So we know that we have a lot of like ESG rating for companies, but on the environmental part, the carbon rating for companies we don't have yet. In Malaysia, we do have the energy benchmarking, we do have the safety and health, but to conclude the environmental impact, we should have the carbon benchmarking, carbon rating for companies.
All right, carbon rating for companies. All right, that's
We have
as if
the
which
carbon
is
rating for building, right?
yeah.
So we have carbon rating for companies as well.
Okay, right, good.